Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko, former immigration attorney turned entrepreneur. I am the co-founder of Laborless, an immigration tech company that automates H-1B visa compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, a digital marketing agency for the immigration and global mobility industry, which, of course, brings you the show. Super excited. Today is episode number 124. Our guest today is actually calling or tuning in all the way from the UK, which is very nice because it's Monday afternoon here in New York and it's evening for him. Dmitry Litvinov, who is the CEO and founder of Dreem, and that's spelled Dreem. And Dreem is an immigration technology platform that helps with US and UK visas, helping folks obtain those through technology in a more streamlined fashion. We'll get to, his story and how he came across this problem. As often is the case, it's a problem that comes up through one's own experiences. And when somebody is a business-minded, entrepreneur like Dmitry is, it's really hard to come across a problem and not say something like, why isn't this better? And why can't I solve the problem? So really excited to get into that. Into the story of Dimitri's career and his company Dreem. Before we get in there, I do want to say thank you to the main sponsor of this episode, DocketWise. So for the immigration lawyers and in-house folks as well, and paralegals and such who are out there listening, you probably know DocketWise. DocketWise is an all-in-one immigration case management platform with best-in-class immigration forms, customizable questionnaires in a ton of different languages, to accommodate clients, integrations with a ton of different apps. They're actually the first immigration tech platform to even have open APIs. So the integration is great. My company, Laborless, has an integration with them. They have great customer service. They have a lot of support and supporting material and content for the immigration industry. They've got a really great blog and ebooks and a podcast as well. And they do webinars and they just support this show and do a lot of stuff for the industry. So if you're in the immigration space and you either are looking for a new case management platform, or maybe you're just interested to see what's out there, I definitely recommend checking out DocketWise. The link is in the show notes, or visit www.docketwise.com and tell them you heard about them from the GMI Rocket Show. Okay, long intro. With that, I'm going to bring in our guest today, Dmitry. Thank you so much for being here, man. And I appreciate you taking the afternoon, the evening, I should say, in the UK to come on the show. Thank you.
Hi, Roman. And hi, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me well, see me well on the stream. Happy to join the show, and excited about the next hour or so to speak to you and tell you guys more about my experience and Dreem as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and as a reminder to folks who are listening or watching live, chime in with questions. If you leave a question in the comments, I'll see it, and then you can ask Dmitry something. You can ask myself something if you want. So we have Marianne saying, "Hi, Dima, I'm here and ready when you are." So thank you, Marianne. A loyal listener. I love it that when you join every week, Marianne. Thank you. Always commenting and adding really awesome, insights. So appreciate that. Okay, so Dmitry, or Dima, as Marianne mentioned. So you're based in the UK, but you didn't start there. You're not born in the UK. I think both of our names give away the fact that we come from not where we live today. So you were born in Russia. You grew up in Russia. So I wanted to talk a little bit about. I like to go into the background, right, of the guests, and learn a little bit about kind of who were they when they were younger. Some kids are studious, some kids are entrepreneurial, and I love those stories because I think it gives us a little glimpse into sort of who they end up becoming and why. So when you were, from what you remember, when you were kind of a kid, what was the surrounding that you grew up in, kind of well, I guess where did you grow up? What city or village did you grow up in Russia?
Yeah, I actually was born in Ukraine. I was born
there you go. Boom.
In the city of Lugansk, and I spent like 14 years there, and then my family moved to Moscow, Russia. So my childhood was in Ukraine. My kind of her still younger years, like college years to university years. And first, entrepreneurial experience was back, in Russia. So the surrounding I had was, it was post-Soviet Union kind of her type of environment, and many things were, I would say, not exactly stable. People, try to do, I think, lots of things. There are lots of entrepreneurs back in these years with very simple models, like trying to buy something, like sell something, and even like in my pretty small city, there's lots of people like that. My parents are absolutely not in this field. My father is a civil pilot, actually, and but I think the cool thing about this fact is that even though I was in the Soviet Union in a small city in Ukraine, I kind of got used to like seeing things from abroad, because he brought things, stories, anecdotes from all over the world. And that, I think, how I, even in the very young age, kind of aspired to live some more international kind of life. My mother was a teacher of history, which is also pretty cool, because I was always like into learning about different cultures and different things like that. I moved to Moscow. Moscow was a little bit more of a, like a bigger city. It was a more international background, especially at that point of time. So that's more about how it started. Yeah.
Do you think that you were? So it's really cool to hear that. But so yes, you didn't grow up in kind of like a business family, right? Your family didn't run a store or own a company or something. But do you feel that you were more driven towards education and studying? Were your parents kind of always pushing you to do better and better in school, or were you kind of more of a kid who also bought and sold things as a child, and like you enjoyed that spirit of business, if you will?
Yeah, I think I actually enjoy the spirit of business. It's a funny story. Like my first entrepreneurial experience was at the age of, I don't know, maybe 7 or whatever. I don't remember exactly. So I was in a country house, even like not in the city in Luhansk in Ukraine, but like in the country house at my grandma's kind of house, a very, very small village. And what I did, I bought I had some cash, and I bought like a fresh fish in the store. It was a summer, like 35 degrees Celsius. So what I did then, I just I decided to sell it right near the store, just like putting the fresh fish on the ground. Of course, it was like there was a problem, and then someone told me, you'll not sell like the fish like that. But I tried my best, and I think it was a very, very fascinating experience.
How old were you?
I think it was 7 or 8 or something. It was really,
So
really,
funny.
really young. Yeah, it was funny. It was unsuccessful, as always, like with the entrepreneur thing, first experiences are unsuccessful, but I kind of learned some things. Like, for example, you need to think about like whether you're doing the right thing that someone will buy, right? And whether you price it well, right? And then things like that. Yeah.
That's so interesting. So because you're so young, where did you get this idea?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I think again in my family, even like if we look at my grandparents, we didn't have anyone in entrepreneurship. I think my mother had the spirit. She actually ended up like after she was like a teacher of history, like for 20 or something. She ended up like being a general manager of a manufacturing in Moscow. So she was like very, I would say, entrepreneurial by spirit, although she was always like working at the company. So maybe that's how it brought me to that idea. But also I think again the environment and in the country that was at that point of time was pretty hectic. People tried many things. It wasn't extremely kind of rich and so on. So you can rely on the state, right? So like I was very young to understand that, but I probably saw some things and felt some things. just wanted to make it. So yeah. And I had, in that, like later in my life, I think I had some glimpses of, what you would say was a entrepreneurial kind of spirit and so on. But this kind of, selling fish experience at the age of 7 was pretty. What was the first one?
I mean, I think it's such a basic concept. I think we really have romanticized entrepreneurship. That was not a word for the longest time. Now it's everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but oftentimes people don't, I think about what it really means. To your point, I mean, my family as well. I mean, before we left the Soviet Union and came to the U.S., we tried to collect a little bit of money, and so there's so many stories of like my dad going, because we were in Ukraine as well, in Kharkiv, and so we would go. My dad would go to Moscow and get some fur coats for cheaper, and then bring them on the train, and then go to the bazaar, and then sell it there or something. And you make a little bit of a difference, but that's business, right? You buy at a lower price than you sell, in a different market. And I think that's something that's ingrained in a lot of people, not just from the Soviet Union, from many parts of the world. And yeah, you're right. I should say it's the same for me. I didn't grow up in a family of entrepreneurs, but that simple buying and selling, it was always just part of the story, and so it also kind of stuck with me. But I never did. I'm so impressed that you did this. I always reflect on my own childhood. I never had the confidence to spend to think about even buying something and selling it for more. I don't know why. I always just I'm going to go to school and study and get a job. I never even thought about having a business. So that's why I love to ask that question. Okay, so you grew up and spent a lot of your time, obviously, in Ukraine. Your family eventually moved to Moscow, during high school years. You went to university in Moscow as well, I believe, right? So when you after you graduated from university, let's talk a little bit about your first kind of entrepreneurial experience. You started, and this is on your LinkedIn profile, but you started a travel agency in Russia, which you have said is the first online travel agency for Russia, called onlinetours.ru, which is brilliant. Tell me a little bit about that. How did that happen? Because that's a big deal. I mean, you raised money for it, and you made it into a real business. How did that happen? How did you get the idea, and what steps did you take initially to make it work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I would need to start with the fact that I was studying in the university that was kind of funded by Moscow government, and I was supposed actually to be someone who will work for Moscow government for some time. But then it was 2009. Basically, the financial crisis happened, and my contract was actually, I was my study was funded by them, but I was supposed to work for a couple of years, I think, for the government. But then the crisis happened, and they say, okay, you know what, we don't have any jobs. And I was basically pretty happy with that, because I had some internships in government kind of institutions, and I didn't really like it. And my degree was in international relations, kind of more with, I think, political kind of emphasis. So my entrepreneurship journey didn't have anything about I would say the education. The reality is that I met a team of three people actually, who started the business of generating leads from the internet from those people who want to who are looking for tours, tour packages. This was the market. And they're looking for the first employee, because they were working in consulting, in venture capital firm, and so on. So they were it was a side project for them. So I was the first employee, and I was basically the main employee for several months. So my journey in entrepreneurship started not exactly as an entrepreneur, but rather I was hired as the first kind of guy to run the project, to run kind of side business. And I think they tried for several months before. They didn't sell anything. They wanted to sell this kind of it was kind of SaaS thing to travel agencies, like they didn't succeed.
Ah.
And then I came and for some reason I just decided like I did good job there, right? So and I basically started to sell this kind of kind of services, those leads to travel agencies. And for a year or so we did that, but then we realized, okay, there's a growing internet kind of expansion because it was 2009 first when I joined. Like it wasn't that kind of, especially in Russia, it wasn't that kind of internet was not that kind of a thing where everything was like I would say on that. So the market was absolutely offline. Like what we did was like quite new. But then we started to realize, that Booking.com appeared, Airbnb and so on. So a lot more and more of travel agencies. And the market of travel packages in Russia was pretty huge. It was $15 billion market, absolutely offline. So we saw the opportunity, and that's how I became a part of a co-founding team of another kind of firm that we built on that firm of lead generating. So that's how we created the online travel agency called Online Tours. And I became a kind of a junior co-founder of a team of pretty cool and senior people. I think I was really lucky to believe them in their project and like, I don't know, sign a contract in a coffee shop or whatever it was. I don't know, in 2009. So that's how I became a co-founder of the company. Which was basically the model was pretty simple and still pretty simple. The market of travel packages, like the market of I don't know, bookings of airlines, bookings, air flights, right? So on. So it was offline. You need to go to mom and pop kind of shop to buy a tour package. So we saw the opportunity. Okay, let's bring this traditional conservative, big market. Let's bring new customer experience of online kind of, booking and selling. The idea was pretty simple. The execution was much, harder, especially at the point of time. We had to go through lots of things. And essentially, I think what I was succeeding in was very important thing is that I was basically responsible for driving the infrastructure on the market. So because everyone was offline, like travel agencies, tour operators were offline. So my main kind of task was basically to go and convince them to invest in technology, like in the open interfaces like APIs and so on, which didn't exist. So for us to be able to sell online. So that was the main kind of focus on my end, and then we it went pretty well. We raised I think $9 million, pretty good evaluation and so on. So it was a pretty successful at that point of time startup. People talk about that. Things changed a little bit further down the road.
Well, I was going to ask you, how did that, you were there for almost 5 years. So how did you obviously grew it, you raised money, you grew it into a viable business. If you can share kind of what prompted you maybe to leave or to want to move on?
Frankly speaking, from 2014, the political situation, you probably know, in Russia started to change, and travel business specifically hurt pretty, was hurt pretty much. It was all these kind of political issues, but also economical. There were some massive bankruptcy of the airlines. There were things related to like closing the whole countries, like to travel. Turkey, one of them, like 50% of the market basically is Turkey, our market. And at some point in time, it was like banned, like to travel to Turkey, like lots of crazy things happened. And as I said, I was kind of out of our like 4 co-founders, I was like the junior one, right? Just like fresh and so on. So I felt like, okay, something's going on here. And I'm still not doing anything internationally. It's a kind of a local recipe and so on. So I decided, okay, I need to make a decision whether I'm stick to this kind of experience. It's pretty cool, great experience, amazing entrepreneurial, fundraising, international venture capital firms and so on, but kind of was going into not very clear direction because of, I would say, macro environment that we had, or I do something else. And that's how I take a risk to go to the business school. One of my co-founders and also my kind of mentor, he's a Harvard HBS kind of an MBA, and we just had this kind of chat, and he was saying, Dima, you have some skill set that business schools like, and then that's how I decided to dive into that. And my education in Russia was, I would say, pretty relaxed, honestly. So all this kind of I would say business spirit and business skills were more like intuitive. I did things, but I didn't realize like the theory behind that, to be very honest. So I kind of felt at some point of time, okay, especially in the boardroom, like with, I don't know, ex, McKinsey partners, and I don't know, like top VC firms. I felt like a little bit kind of, I don't fully understand what's going on here. So, and because I wanted to like have an international career, that looked pretty good, kind of, I would say, option for me. That's how I ended up in London Business School, one of the top kind of business schools in the world. And yeah, I decided to do the business education. I know it sounds pretty, I'm not the very straightforward kind of profile for business schools. Typically, consultants, IB guys go there. So I actually went from like, entrepreneurship to the business school. But in my kind of case, I think it was an extremely right decision. So I got very structured knowledge of a business. I met lots of people from around the world. I actually, pushed pretty forward my career in terms of international kind of development. We can talk about this in a moment. So yeah, that was one of our, this was the next kind of, I would say, pretty maybe not trivial decisions that I made. Like, just let's do it and let's take a risk to kind of push the boundaries. And it was pretty successful in my opinion.
And starting a business is very much business school. I mean, you learn on the job from people who are teaching you something concrete. It's not theory. It's not, based on something that happened 100 years ago or 150 years ago. I always wanted to go to business school. And then actually my mom went to business school, so I watched her go through it. And, there was some stuff, of course, that I don't know. I never did, higher level accounting but I have no interest in that, right? But the bigger things, the marketing, the product development, the market research and things like that, I realized I learned so much on the job starting my own businesses, and I'm sure it was the same for you. And in hindsight, to your point, if I went to business school now, they would probably love somebody like me, and obviously they loved somebody like you, because we have that real life experience of starting something. All they do is plug in the technical details that we don't have.
Exactly.
So you went to business school in London, which is an amazing experience. And then you got and I'm just honestly looking at your LinkedIn profile, you went from starting kind of a startup in Russia to now suddenly working at like massive global companies, right? You worked at, I never know how to pronounce this, Rakuten? How do you,
yeah.
Rakuten. Okay. Yeah. So you worked there as an intern. You worked at Uber as an intern. You got to work in Rakuten. You were in Tokyo, Japan. That must have been an amazing experience, being able to travel and do an internship in Japan. And then you went there to work, I guess, full time, right, at the company. So I just, before I want to talk a little bit about these jobs that you had, because you worked there, then you worked at WeWork for a few years, kind of before you went back into the startup world. What was it like going from, you came from smaller city in Ukraine. You went to university, then in Moscow, bigger city. You started your own business, scrappy startup. Like as the internet is really starting to boom in Russia, and then suddenly you're working at these massive, corporations with thousands of employees, billions and billions of revenue all across the world. What do you think you started to learn from these experiences, these more corporate experiences that? That helped you add to your skill set as a business leader?
Exactly. I think that like I would probably say that my Uber experience, maybe WeWork experience, and then I work with a company called SmartCat, which is also like Series B startup at that point of time, were kind of similar. It was still early stage company, like not extremely early stage, but let's say still in the not in the late stage company, not like exact corporations, although huge.
Right.
So, but Rakuten experience was pretty different. It's corporation. It's in Japan. With all this kind of artifacts and so on. So, I think I did genuinely wanted to kind of experience living in a different environment and culture. Explore things. So one of the reasons was just pretty, I would say, personal, right? To go move in there and again, experience the boundaries of what you can do. How you can live like in the country like Japan, right? Where like culture is pretty different. But the great thing that I had in this experience is that I worked in the so-called Chief Executive Innovation Office. I'm not sure if they have it right now. But the idea is that I actually worked with the CEO and founder of the company, which is Hiroshi Mikitani. It's like, one of the like top guys, I would say, man in Japan, like, billionaire and so on, who founded this company. So I worked in his office on an innovative like project. So basically everything that, company wanted to start something like some innovation and so on. There were like a team of like 8 people, including me, who were like overseeing those kind of projects, doing research and so on. So that was the main reason, to be very honest, not exactly like the corporate environment itself, although I experienced that. So, and that experience was pretty cool because I actually experienced some form of consulting type of approach, and working with pretty, great professionals and closely to the CEO of, corporation. And because my aspiration is and has been always like, to build a big company, to build something close reminding corporation. I still wanted to experience that and to understand how things work there, what things work and what things do not work. How does the CEO of a 15,000 I think employee company and several several thousands of billion kind of revenue thinks about things, right? And then all this kind of stuff. So that was a pretty cool experience, and I did some pretty I would say interesting projects, again, in very different kind of spheres. This conglomerate, they have bank, they have mobile operator, they have like e-commerce and so on. So I did those projects, and it was great experience of understanding those things that I wanted, but also I kind of understood that, okay, this is something I don't want to be in right now. I got the feeling of corporate environment, but I do want to do some more of a startup-ish kind of type of things, launching things, growing business and so on. That's how I ended up at WeWork at the time of when, when they raised lots of money and they were growing like crazy. And then I changed, like, again, like, my, like, everything to go into real estate. And then like leading the growth and the sales team, like basically building that in the Eastern Europe.
So I mean, which is an amazing experience because sales is the life of any company. So for you to be able to go into a position where, I mean, I guess you eventually became head of sales, that's massive. So yeah, I love that. I just a comment on that a little bit. When I was in college, university, I studied economics, and like I always wanted to work in finance. And my internships, and these were just internships, but still, were at investment banks in New York, right? And I realized after I graduated, I had a good time, but I never thought about those jobs really. But after I graduated, especially when I started to work for myself, and I met other and sort of knew other founders of their own businesses, I realized I learned so many things, not directly, but indirectly, I worked at Bear Stearns, which then, in 2008 was acquired by JP Morgan during the crisis. And then I worked at JP Morgan for a couple of years. And even small things like how to organize information on your computer, how to make it so that you are not stepping into a mess, but you have a virtual business. It's not a store with shelves and refrigerators. It's just on the computer. But how do you make it organized so that you don't waste your time looking for things or confusing people, but you just, you hyper focus on work? How to use certain tools for time management, how to use spreadsheets correctly. I mean, my friends who didn't study anything related to business and had no experience in business, but then started their own businesses, which I respect greatly. But when they did that, I could tell that they didn't have these skills that to me felt like, of course, well, duh, second nature. So that's why I wanted to ask, because I think it's a really cool experience when you go from working at a small business, when you're figuring all these systems out, and then you get a glimpse of organizations that have the systems already built out. You can then take those systems and make your next company from the foundation really strong, so that you're focusing on only, you know, the core product and not like building all of the infrastructure around it. So before we move on, because I this is where we start to get into like, okay, how did this idea for Dreem come about, right? Because you've now traveled around the world. You've obviously moved from Ukraine to Russia, although in the Soviet Union that wasn't that big of a deal. But now you've done England and Japan and all that. So, but before we do that, I do want to just take a quick pause and say thank you to the second sponsor of the show, which is a startup actually called CaseBlink. So CaseBlink is an AI platform that's honestly been growing and transforming itself, and I think transforming the immigration law practice. It's co-founded by attorneys, an attorney, a technologist, and an AI scientist. And they started a few years ago with drafting complex applications. So like EB2 NIWs, EB1s, O1s, and L1s, a lot of US immigration applications that require a lot of writing. They started with automating that using large language models and AI. And now they've gone from that to helping organize and assemble documents. They extract data and draft summaries and legal briefs. And now they even have something what they call a studio feature, which helps immigration lawyers draft everything in their own style and like help with intake and things like that. So they've gone from just drafting to really becoming something that is an extension of a law firm, and they've most recently launched Forms. So really moving into the immigration case management business as well from a foundation of AI. So they've got some great investors. They have a few big law firms that are users. So I'm very excited for them, and I thank you to CaseBlink for supporting the show. So if anyone's out there who's interested in checking them out, the website is caseblink.com. So thank you to them. Okay. So, Dimitri, back to you. You've had these experiences. You started a business. You went to business school, which is a pretty big risk. I mean, you went abroad and a new environment, new people. You went to large organizations and, really hyper scale startups, if you will, like Uber and WeWork. I know you eventually also went to like a digital, I guess, like marketing or like an AI business, right? That helps with actually, I want to ask you about, because I was going to kind of skip over this, but I want to ask you a little bit about it. SmartCat. I know you worked there for a few years, and I saw that it's related to language. Yeah. Did any of this have anything to do with the fact that you had traveled a lot and you met people in all different parts of the world? You obviously speak multiple languages. I'm just curious. I don't want to dive into this too much, but I was wondering, because language and immigration are hand in hand.
Yeah, I think that like indirectly, yes, because again, I was always into like let's say international business, like international cultures and so on. So I have international friends. Lived in several countries. Actually, I also lived like in Spain for half a year. It's not on the CV, but when it's exchange. So I had this experience of like moving, like in other countries, and of course, languages are also like a big thing. I tried to learn some Japanese. So I think when this opportunity came, I think again indirectly, kind of like the fact that I was very into like international life helped like me to make a decision, but it was related to like I didn't look for specifically. I wasn't looking for like that type of a like industry. As you can probably see from my CV, I always like change things, and then I had to say, like, why not? So it is actually a SaaS company. It's a pure SaaS kind of tool for localization and translation needs for like enterprise clients and so on. I was responsible for like 2 regions. I mean, we changed things, but like I was for general manager for Europe, EMEA, and then Asia, and then actually again becoming a head of sales for the like whole company. Very interesting experience of being, I would say, on a top level in a very well-funded kind of US-based SaaS company, rather than like being I would say intern like an Uber, right? I became like a like a manager in that kind of fast growing company. It was very helpful for me to get the balance and how things work at this stage of the company, which I envision further in my life and in my company now. So yeah, that's how I ended up there. But honestly, even before that, I already, I think when I came back from Japan to Russia for a couple of years, it was COVID times, launching WeWork and so on. I started thinking about like entrepreneurial paths once again. I kind of got the experience, got the knowledge, and I wanted to do things on my own. So I actually experimented with a couple of things. I even launched a company that was an online reselling kind of space. So I did, I would say, some tests and then experiments. But then, if we shall we talk about the Dreem and how I came to that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, and then I moved back again to London to work for SmartCat, and at some point in time I was like, hey, I'm ready. I don't want to I don't want to run my own company. Actually, I think I can share that. It's a little bit personal, but I think it kind of gets a little bit into like provide some colors. And so I also went through like a divorce at this point of time, and it was like very emotional kind of time. But to make it even, I would say maybe more challenging for me, or maybe this is something how it should start. I don't know. I said again, this is the time for me to actually start new things, like new life and so on. So. And I was looking for an idea. Actually, I test several things and on the US market, like completely unrelated to like this to this field. But I also went through personal experience of getting so-called global talent visa in the UK, which was a very similar kind of type of visa that we currently Dreem focus on. Also, several of my let's say good friends actually went through the process of getting, into the US, getting visas, green cards and so on. And we were casually discussing things, not necessarily related to exactly like, my business, but just like how it went, and we shared things about the experience. And, it struck me at some point in time that like, we didn't have, like, none of us had a good experience. And all of us actually spent quite a lot of money. It's like it just comes to you spend lots of money and you don't get like a good experience. So and I personally again experienced it with myself. So when basically I paid like several thousand like dollars, actually quite a lot of dollars for the visa, but then in the end I spent like several weekends just like rewriting things on my own, like like so that was my personal experience. Still, I didn't think about this to, I would say, like extremely seriously. I was just like looking into like opportunities, and and then at one point of time we were experimenting with other things with one of my like let's say good partners, good kind of friends, and he was actually going through this same kind of process, going all through O1As, EB1As in the US, and he was like saying this test drive that we had for another company didn't work, and he was like, why don't you want to look into this? Like you see it's a big market, traditional, conservative kind of, and the experience is not necessarily great, that at least we all experience. And it's kind of can you dive deep into that? And I started to kind of research and like look into the issues, and I saw the opportunity. Okay, so it's probably, I mean, definitely I experienced the things on my own, and I also experienced like relocation in different ways. Like when I was in Rakuten, they paid for everything and kind of organized that. When I was a SmartCat, I moved to the UK and I organized everything myself, and I get the global talent UK organized by myself. When I was, so basically I had this several perspectives of how things work for the skilled workers, right? And I started to look into the business, like into the, let's say, the economy of the business, and like the marketing, competition, and so on. And I saw the opportunity, and I did this pretty classical from the business school kind of type of a thing, the customer development thing. So I decided to, again, let's actually talk to like, many people, not just like three of us who experienced that. And because of my background and because of my kind of network, most of people I talked to were founders, tech founders moving to the US. And it is amazing how consistent was the feedback of their experience. Like, so I think I talked to roughly 20 actually people, and I think there was only one who said, "Oh, I can say anything bad about like my experience. It was good." So everyone else.
So 19 people like you probably paid a lot of money and had a bad experience getting their skilled, their skilled talent visa.
That was my customer development kind of analysis. Yeah. Maybe I was so unlucky to just bump into like those people of 19, but 19 is 20 is a good number. Like they were pretty unsatisfied, not necessarily all like the level of unsatisfaction was different, of course, but the consistency of the feedback was pretty cool, because what they say is basically all of them said the overall experience felt pretty outdated. They didn't feel treated as a client and so on. Again, I'm not talking about specific kind of firms and companies, of course, but like that was the experience at that point of time. They said communication was poor, no timelines, no project management at all, and things like that. So the communication, project management, big portion of that, transparency of the process. And they said it was me. The second thing was like the inconsistent quality. Like in the end, they looked at the applications, were like not necessarily great storytelling and mistakes and so on in the process. And then the other thing is that, and very important, that they, I think most of them actually worked with, I would say, more like traditional firms. Again, nothing against the traditional firms in the sense, the knowledge and expertise, but I think the approach was pretty different. So what they said is that we actually ended up like paying like 10, 15K and spending like 10 hours per weekend, 20 hours per weekend, like drafting things, writing things, and so on. And it was like not something you would expect like from paying money. So, and that was my experience as well, although it is a little bit different. So yeah. And the last comment was that, again, it was they're founders, right? So like you, and they were kind of expecting things to be more like turnkey. You guys, I pay you, you do these things, I provide whatever you want, whatever is needed, please help me, support me.
Right.
That wasn't the case. And also, I think the narrative, the whole kind of, things, they basically kind of experienced the fact that, the firms whom they worked with were kind of passing all the storytelling on them. Like, you explain what you do, you explain what you know, which is, of course, reasonable, because you know better your life, in the background. But at the same time, for this kind of particular audience, it was something you don't want to do. Founders, they want to do things fast and so on.
That's true.
Yeah, and that's how I came up with, okay, this is something I believe is viable, because you can bring the business expertise to, let's say, a little bit more of again, traditional market, like I did with offline, business of travel, where like we brought this online expertise to very kind of traditional, field of offline shops. Of course, we are not the only one. Lots of companies coming into this space, but I think it still was like when I started Dreem, it was a very good timing of like understanding there is an opportunity. I'm speaking purely from the business perspective. Fully respect all the like stakeholders in the market, and I think what our company does, and also other companies actually on this space do is basically we're driving some innovation, which will be in the end helpful for everyone who has, let's say, forward-looking kind of stakeholders here, both clients, firms, attorneys. It's just the matter of improving things on the market that has been there for a long time. We just need to create a better space, more modern space for new companies, for new clients, for maybe like for regulators as well.
Yeah, the hope would be that the government, especially in the U.S., I'm actually not as obviously knowledgeable about the UK immigration process, but the hope is that the government looks at some of these private industries or private companies and implements a little bit of technology or a little bit more technology. So that makes a lot of sense, right? You had this problem. You interviewed a number of other people who are similarly situated like you, founders, who had a similar problem, whether to the UK, whether to the US, overpriced service that you got. You still had to do a lot of work, and the expectation was, if I'm paying you, I'll give you the foundational information that you need. I expect you to put everything basically together. So it makes a lot of sense. Now, talk a little bit about what is Dreem? How does it work? If I'm a founder, because Dreem focuses on talent visas, right? I mean, at least for now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how does it work? If I'm somebody who says, I'm talented, I have experience, I have a higher education, I have started some startups, whatever it might be, and I want to relocate. I mean, right now you're doing relocation to the US and I believe to the UK, according to your website. How does it work? What can I expect as, a talented, skilled individual who wants to come to the US?
Sure. First of all, I have to mention that I think like 99% of our client portfolio and product portfolio is in the US. So we do support UK visas. Honestly, the sales stream is fully in the US. The market is larger and so on. So it's pretty clear. So we do support right now 4 types of visas. So it's O1As, EB1As. We do EB2 national affairs, and we also do L1s for businesses. So only those, and only 2 audiences, industry, right? So we only do founders, entrepreneurs, C-level executives sometimes, and IT guys, okay, IT professionals and so on. So we don't do anything else. We don't do generation and so on. So when I say we, is exactly like Dreem, in the form of some business process and management and let's say people managing the services, plus the technology behind that. We can talk about this right now, and the attorneys. So we actually work with attorneys, and we still rely on their expertise, and we don't want to create an expertise out of nowhere, because I'm not an expert. I've never been an attorney and so on. What we do for them as well is basically we decrease the amount of, let's say, day-to-day routine kind of work by optimizing things through the management of the processes and the technology, but still rely on the expertise. So these are 3 main kind of things. So again, the business processes, a little bit more efficient, as we say, the technology and the attorneys. But from the client perspective, what we actually bring is exactly what they were looking for from the this customer development thing. So we do bring transparency, project management, communication. We do bring the focus, and we do things for the clients, those things that can be done, nothing really extraordinary, nothing really kind of I'll say illegal, just combining things, describing things based on their information and so on, helping them drafting things and so on. And what we also do, we do very good storytelling. So we create a narrative, and this is actually pretty interesting, because also it also came from my MBA application. My co-founder, she's also MBA. I know we can talk about MBA and business school. It's not for everyone, but I think what business school brings and at the stage of application is actually the storytelling. You need to tell the story, and I think that all these talent visas, we believe, together with the attorneys who are our partners and so on, that this, especially nowadays with all the new administration, the actual kind of a narrative and story, the consistency of the whole picture it becomes more and more important, rather than just ticking the boxes, area. So we do that, and honestly, this is something that you would need. I mean, I'm not sure if you are actually surprised, but even great founders, having several exits, all these kind of artifacts of great kind of cases, they can't really define their field of expertise, for example. I don't know, so it's lots of things, right? Or things like that. So what we do, we have some smart people in the team, who look at the backgrounds, look at the kind of at the things, and also like all these kind of let's say uh, uh, evidences and requirements, and try to basically not to create but to translate the background of someone into the like good and concrete, and it was a simple language that was really that anyone can understand, especially officers. So this project management, communication, the narrative, turnkey solution, like minimizing the time investment in everything, and focus, very good focus. So we've been processing, I think already like around 200 cases. All of them are in this field. All of them are in this field. So we actually know already more than I would say some companies being on the market like for a long time, because we only do those. We don't do anything else, right? Yeah. You want to talk about technology?
Yeah. So right. So makes sense what you do. I'm a founder. I'm an entrepreneur, or maybe a C-suite executive. I want to use Dreem. What is the product? What does it look like for me? What do I expect?
For you, it looks pretty simple. In the sense, we do not, as of now, we do not push anyone to log in into like any kind of system and so on. We actually create a chat-based approach. So basically we do have a case space kind of where they can log in, and they actually do that, but we facilitate the chat-based communication and in a specifically developed kind of integrated tool where they basically provide things based on some, let's say, live to-do lists that we provide to them, like just giving us things, we giving them tasks, they giving us some hard copies of some information and so on, and then going through step by step, and they can see the timeline, how we exactly kind of process things. We do drafts and things and iterate. So again, very similar to what I see IT guys or like founders kind of get used to. In the small iterations, we go through the phases up until the point they actually gather the petition. And for them, it looks like a constant kind of communication with a set of kind of let's say tools developed to basically provide some information in a more convenient way, and a set of constant communication syncs that we have with them to basically provide the updates on what's going on and get more information. On the back end, it's a different story. So like what we do, it's a mix of a process and technology. For the client, it looks pretty much simple, and so we don't force at this point in time, at least for them to do things on their own or like in the technology platform, but rather very natural, human-based interactions, but much more effortlessly than they typically do, let's say, working in a more traditional kind of approach. So for founders, it looks like that.
Is it a chat only app, or is there, I mean, you said you can log in, is there a place to upload files? Do you have a dashboard? Do you have
There is, yeah. So there is a kind of, it's called a case space where they can log in and they can see like a live, let's say, transfer kind of like again to-do list for them, what they need to upload and so on. They can upload the files. This is the timelines and so on. But we kind of integrate things so that they, we still pretty much rely on, I would say, a communication and chat-based approach. We found it that it's much more convenient for people rather than just like, let's say, investigate how things work and so on, but rather, provide things directly. So for you, from the user experience, it looks pretty, natural, just chat-based. They still log in, from time to time. They see things, they upload things, and so on. Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you, I know on the website you have this evaluate my choices thing, which of course allows you to, it's like a sales funnel. I mean, you get people, you give them some free kind of access to, to information. Is there an AI aspect to the platform. And there, by the way, there doesn't have to be. I'm not a proponent of every single company has to have AI, but I think a lot of people like to hear it. So I'm just curious because Laborless, by the way, for the record, as of now, we're not an AI platform, and I'm okay with that. We don't need to be. Not every company needs to be. Do you have any thoughts about AI, either within Dreem or maybe more generally for the future of the company?
Absolutely. So once we kind of move forward to the, let's say, backend kind of this kind of the platform, what we do, which is a little bit different from, the customer kind of facing, let's say, app, which is basically just, chat based and like call based and so on. So what we do use the AI, and we actually developed the proprietary kind of, system that allows us to do very specific things in terms of AI. So what we do, number one, is basically the review. So we do rely on AI in some way, not necessarily like in like 100%. We still have humans, of course, but like we think, what we found out is that AI really can be good in catching like issues and problems in let's say 1,000 page long application that that actually has lots of things like from just general, like very typical, I would say mistakes to actual inconsistencies and so on. So this is something that, AI highlights on some stages. We use it. And basically then again, it's not created by AI. It's not about creation of the things. It's rather about like reviewing things. So we found out it's really helpful. So again, next stage, someone like person, there is let's say paralegals and also attorneys in the end, review things. But we kind of facilitate the quality by, reviewing some forms, some parts of the application through AI. Another thing, what we do with AI, we kind of experimented with this. It's not, again, as you said, I would say, completely bad at kind of a product, but because we have those, lots of applications that we kind of have been processing already, kind of processed, and we have very kind of heterogeneous kind of sort of homogenic kind of audience, like with very typical kind of of course different backgrounds, but like very typical thing. So what we do, we of course anonymize the data, and we trained our LLM based on some like narratives that we previously saw in the successful, and we try to come up with some very basic but really helpful structures in terms of narratives for the new cases. So basically, when you come to us, you as a client, you provide us just like you can even do the voice messaging, we then transcribe things. So we basically combine all this kind of chaos of documents and and pieces of information into something structured, sometimes manual, sometimes more automatically. And then what we try to do again, anonymizing things, create what would work from the, like, let's say, the strategy perspective, not necessarily, it's not a legal thing, but rather, again, the storytelling, what will work for this particular kind of, evidences and backgrounds best on what we saw in the past. Like, for example, identifying the best match kind of field of expertise, sure, or things like what out of these kind of evidences, what you saw. I mean, we asked the AI, right? What you saw and previously, what would be like the best approach to kind of let's use the priorities, right? Like all
and where is your system learning this from? Previous cases? Are the lawyers giving you access to their cases? So previous of your cases.
Yes. Of course, we don't have like the access to lawyer case and so on. So we do on our cases, all the cases are anonymized. Of course, no, sure, last names, first names, sure, companies. Sure. We don't need it. Like the LLM doesn't need it, right? So right. So it's all ours. That's why I would say it's in kind of an early stage, because we do want to have more of them. We do want to have all. I would say we would need also an unsuccessful applications. As of now, we speak right now, sure, we didn't have a single unsuccessful application. That's the problem also for us. We will face in the future, it's just evidently, and also like you probably know, there's a little bit of I would say pressure like on the USCIS officer and so on. But as of now, we all have successful ones. So we train on them. We do have also data sets from, let's say, publicly available data. So there are some applications like people just like share them publicly. So we do have that, but it's a small, like for training the all kind of proprietary LLM. It's pretty small amount of data for now, but we kind of get in there.
What do you think? Maybe as like a couple more questions for you. What do you think separates Dreem from maybe other companies in the market, from your perspective?
You know what? I would say there are companies a little bit more on technological advance, typically focusing on B2B kind of solutions. Helping lawyers, maybe companies like us, and so on. I don't see, and I didn't see a lot of companies that actually try to bring value directly to the customer, like us, like B2C, right? To the founders and to the IT professionals, and do this in the way that combines the human touch, the human brain of like all this storytelling and like all this stuff with the technology in the backend that helps processing cases in a better quality and faster. So I think this combination makes us stand out. Of course, and I'm not saying we are already there. There are lots of things to be done. There are lots of things, but the vision is here, and also there are some good, I would say, evidence we are succeeding here. I started a company like 2 years ago. Like technically, I would say we are in the market 1.5 years ago, but we already been passing through several hundreds, 200s of cases. So people see it. We've been referred quite a lot. As I know, our referral rate out of those who didn't even have the final decision is much higher than the market. So people just try things. They just, that's pretty cool, and then they refer us to other clients. So the fact that we bring the technology and the business and IT expertise directly to the customer is something that I see only in a couple of companies that I know. So we do have also like some differentiator from those companies. If you want, we can talk about this, but there are not much of them. It's either completely tech tools for like B2B kind of B2B kind of motion, or it's a more traditional approach from the attorneys who don't do the other stuff, like project management and so on.
Okay. So right now, let's say you have an audience, your people are listening to you. What are you looking for? Are you looking for, more customers, clients? Or you're looking for founders and entrepreneurs and C-suite folks, or immigration lawyers to help with like grow your network of support? Kind of who do you want to check out Dreem?
Yeah. Honestly, I think what we do right now is basically creating more like internal product to support like these kind of B2C motion. Like in the future, I do believe, and I see that we can become more like a platform that will become more like a marketplace for many stakeholders in this kind of field to help them with other issues. I know it sounds pretty generic, but like this is what we do.
Yeah.
But what we do is very different from, let's say, very tech companies. In the way we actually we do solve the real problems of real people. We actually have a very short kind of feedback loop into what is needed. And what I'm trying to say is that we are happy and very, very open to having open conversations with any stakeholders. We don't want to, again, sounds pretty trivial, but it's truly just like my personal kind of touch to that is we do want to grow the pie. We do want to grow and improve the market as a whole for everyone. Of course, there will be someone who will lose and someone who will win, but it's not about like being extremely aggressive, like like this. I do want to make a very kind of I would say a friendly image of the company, and also like help lots of kind of stakeholders, whether it's clients or attorneys. So if you're an attorney, we can support some parts of it. We actually do have already B2B motion with attorneys as well. So we support some parts of their applications. Like we basically can outsource the paralegal kind of type of things in some way or another. you can come to us. We also have cases whom you can kind of review and be, file a petition and so on. If your clients will be happy, the only thing I would probably say is that we probably will be not the best solution if you are not in the business or tech kind of field, or if you want to, a general immigration kind of, advice. We're not legal firm, so we don't do that. We have quite a few of requests. People come to us and say, I'm I'm an artist, I want to do that, and so on. Honestly, I always say, I know who helped you best, better, and so on. So we don't do that. But if you're like a founder, if you're a tech professional, and you want to have a good modern service, a solution that relies on human expertise of those who been in this industry for a long time, but process things a little bit faster in a modern way, you come to us and you can experience pretty good kind of things.
Yeah, I like that. It's good to know that you focus on the technology and sort of like business founder and tech professional space, because you're right. I mean, O1 visas, talent visas are for a number of different athletes, artists, writers, musicians, chefs. I mean, there's a lot of and they all have sort of separate requirements a little bit, and so it's good to know that this is an expertise of yours. Well, my last question would be, where can people find you? Where, I know your website is here for anybody watching. It's on the screen here. It's the letter I, Dreem, but it's spelled IDREEM.com. But, can people find you on social media or anywhere else that they can go to follow you?
Yeah, we do have a pretty nice, I think, LinkedIn profile. You can check our LinkedIn page. We try to share cool stuff there, some insights and so on. Again, very focused on on tech and business. So if you're in tech and business, you just can look through some cool insights, learning statistics and so on. So LinkedIn page definitely there. Don't use it even for lead generation. It's definitely, we just want to share some content, there. We have a newsletter, again, trying to make it more of a, I would say edutainment type of a thing, for those who are looking into, relocate and so on. We do have some other, social media, Instagram. I don't think it just basically we just have it. But I think for now, it's our website, it's a LinkedIn profile. We do have from time to time some presence on conferences or in offline even events. So last November we represented on Going Global exhibition in London. So we had actually an offline presence, and I spoke offline to the businesses. So that's probably pretty much it.
So find you on LinkedIn, check out your newsletter, and obviously visit your website. So I think those are good. Those are good asks for the audience.
Dimitri, just book time, and then we can speak.
Well, thank you. This has been great. It's always wonderful to hear about new businesses coming up in the industry, especially focusing on technology. And the O1, EB1, et cetera, EB2 national interest waiver are always growing in popularity, and there's just a huge demand. I mean, I meet lawyers that are starting firms or growing their firms now just with this, these 1 or 2 or 3 visa types, and are incredibly successful. So the demand is huge. And, for better or worse, right now, the U.S. government is very accepting of these visa applications, even if they're obviously doing some, damage, I would say, to the immigration culture in America from some perspectives. I do think that they do continue to not to touch the skilled visa. So for whoever is eligible, they should try it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. Thanks for sticking around so late in the afternoon. And appreciate you.
Cool. Thanks, Roman. Thanks for inviting, and thanks everyone for listening. Let's connect on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to connect in personally, and hopefully, we'll speak sometime, in the future as well. Right, Roman?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
And by the way, just as we were ending the show, we have one of our viewers, Marianne, saying the website is very clean and easy to follow. Congrats. So that's really nice feedback. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for tuning into the show. Of course, big thank you to DocketWise for being the main sponsor of the show. As I said up top, DocketWise is an all-in-one immigration case management platform that provides best-in-class immigration forms, customizable questionnaires, industry-leading integrations, great customer service. They are, unlike where Dreem is moving towards, which is kind of mostly helping individuals and clients directly, kind of more of a B2C. DocketWise is a B2B platform. So DocketWise supports immigration law firms with their case management. DocketWise also helps a lot of corporate clients as their in-house immigration tool. So if you're an immigration law firm, either currently looking for some new technology for your practice, or you just want to know what's out there, check them out. Website is linked in the show notes, or if you don't see them for any reason, the website is docketwise.com, and tell them you heard about them from the GMI Rocket Show. So with that, thanks everybody so much. We're going to have at least 1 week off for the AILA annual conference next week. But with that, appreciate everybody. Have a great weekend and stay safe out there. Peace out.